Hi, this is video 1 for adjective clauses. First, I want you to know that there are two names for this grammar. We can call them adjective clauses. We can also call them relative clauses. Think about what you already know about adjectives, and then think about what you already know about clauses, specifically dependent clauses. And when you add those together, we're going to have an adjective clause. Okay, so you'll see what I mean as we keep going. Think about nouns too. Of course, nouns provide most of the key information in our sentences. Both adjectives and adjective clauses give more information about nouns. Okay, I also want you to remember these basic sentence patterns in English that we've been talking about. Subject-verb, subject-verb-object, subject-verb complement. And also think about these functions of a noun in a sentence that we've talked about, especially with our recent unit on noun phrases. Because these adjectives and nouns are going to work together in a sentence, right? Okay, so why did I ask you to think about nouns? And why do I have these pictures of suitcases? Well, wherever you have a noun in a sentence and you want to add information about it, you can add information about the noun with an adjective clause. So for me, it's like if I have a sentence, but I want to pack more information in, so I will try to pack more stuff into my suitcase. Okay, I'm going to use the story of little Joe to make several examples with adjective clauses. Little Joe was a dog that my family had when I was a little girl, and the story happened when I was about 5 years old. The story basically happened between this dog and my father. One night, the dog refused to come back into the house. He was very excited or agitated, upset. He was jumping around, and he did not want to come into the house. My father understood that the dog was trying to tell him something. He thought the dog wanted him to follow him. The dog wanted to show him something. So my father got a flashlight and told the dog, okay, show me what you want to show me. And he followed the dog. The dog took him into the woods around our house. After a few minutes of walking into the woods, they found an old man. The old man was sitting there. He was cold and afraid. And so, of course, they took him back to our house. They called the police. The police helped the old man to get back home. It turns out that he lived in a nursing home nearby. He was taking a walk and he got lost. So I always loved this story. We felt like our dog was a hero, but I think I especially like the story because of the way that my father respected the dog and respected the dog's intelligence. I think it's a nice thing to think about, how animals and humans work together and can be helpful for each other. Okay, so you know the story. Now you see the SVO. How are we going to connect the story to grammar? Subject, verb, object. In this story, the basic little sentence we could put is, the dog found a man. Okay, but of course you know a lot more information. So how can we pack more information into those sentences? Okay, this slide has several sentences. They are correct in terms of grammar and information. So what's the problem? Well, most of them are simple sentences. That's not a problem by itself, but we don't always want to write simple sentences. The main problem is that the ideas are not connected and the information is lacking. You can pause the video here, read the sentences, ask yourself where you see nouns like dog and man, dog, man, woods, hero, right? Look for the nouns. And remember, those are the places where we could add an adjective clause. Now, the reason I have this one in parentheses, just to kind of give you a little hint of something confusing that's coming up later. This one is not a simple sentence. It has a dependent clause that starts with that. Many adjective clauses start with that, but this is not an adjective clause. This is a noun clause. One thing you can think about right now, we said adjective clauses describe nouns. What comes right before this clause? It's a verb, understood. It's not a noun, okay? So this one is not an adjective clause, but maybe something you can think about later. Okay. So here we can start adding information with adjective clauses. On the left, I have some of those simple sentences, and I have some nouns marked in red. On the right, I have the same sentence and the nouns marked in red, but I've added an adjective clause. So the dog found a man that was lost in the woods. This adjective clause describes what man are we talking about? That were around our house. That's an adjective clause describing the woods. Okay, the third one uses this pronoun whose. Your book has a section on whose. Let's not go crazy worrying about it right now. It also has these commas. So this sentence is a little bit different. You'll learn more about this later. But for now, I just wanted to I wanted to show you an example from this story where I could add the adjective clause to describe the subject, right? So the first example, subject, verb, object, the clause is describing an object. The man found a dog in the woods. That's an object of a preposition. The third one, the clause is describing a subject. And how about the last one? My father and little Joe brought the man who had gotten lost to our house. Okay, in this case, the adjective clause is describing the object. Notice how sometimes the adjective clause is at the end of the sentence, and sometimes it's not at the end of the sentence, but it's never right at the beginning of the sentence. Why? Because it has to have a noun first, okay? Here are a couple more examples. Same thing. I don't want to run out of time with my video, so you should pause and think about them. Okay, so what did all those sentences have? They all had a noun followed by an adjective clause. And I just want to remind you, this is not a sentence, right? So the adjective clause gives more information about the noun, and it could be many words, but that is not a sentence. What is missing would be a main verb, a main clause, right? And what's inside the adjective clause? Well, there's usually a relative pronoun, You'll see a list of those on the next slide, I think. And a subject and a verb, and often a few more words, right? A relative pronoun, a subject, and a verb. Now, a couple tricky things that we'll have to talk about in video 2. Sometimes the relative pronoun is not there. That's confusing. And sometimes the relative pronoun and the subject are the same word. That's also confusing. Those are things I'll try to explain in video 2. So when you read, one way to notice adjective clauses would be to look for those relative pronouns. So remember, adjective clauses are also called relative clauses. We call these words relative pronouns, and those are often the first word in the adjective clause. Who, and especially that. Look, I put all these asterisks. This is by far the most common pronoun that we use. We also use which, sometimes whom, sometimes whose. Probably not very often, but it's possible. We can use when and where. And what is this? Nothing. That is also very common, that there is no relative pronoun, and that's the hardest one because it's invisible and you can't see it, okay? But when you read, it's really good if you can start looking for these pronouns and see if you can identify some adjective clauses, and do you know what noun they are describing? So what about when you write your own sentences? Of course, that's more difficult. That's what we're going to try to tackle in video 2. See you next time. Bye.